Hey everybody, what's going on? My name is Jamie Dean,
Hello, I'm Justin.
and we are doing something a little bit different today here on Sidescrollin because we are here to have a little bit of a chat about something still retro, and that is the 25th anniversary of this thing right here, Mordheim.
Mordheim.
So we are, as well as being avid video game players, avid toy collectors, movie watchers, all that sort of lovely retro stuff. Justin and I are also very big into our wargaming, into our Warhammer and the like. And with Mordheim turning 25 this year, can you believe it? 25
I
years
can't
old.
believe that it's 25 years old.
That is
It,
nuts.
it,
We
it,
thought we
I feel
wanted to
like,
do something to commemorate that for such a what I think is such a special game. Anyway,
yeah.
but before we get too far into that and what we're going to be doing for our little project for the 25th anniversary of this wonderful game, I thought we might just talk a little bit about our history as wargamers. Justin, do you want to
Yeah.
kick that off and tell us a little bit about your relationship with this particular hobby?
So as a kid, I was always a modeler. Like I loved
Like, as
doing
in a
model
model,
kits
like a
and
catwalk model.
yeah. God, look at me. Are you kidding? Of course. I've been built like a 50-year-old man since I was 10. So yeah, there's nothing they love more than the plus size chubby kid walking down the catwalk. They had to reinforce the catwalks for me. Um, so yeah, I was always looking for something new to paint. I've always liked D&D and stuff like that. Even though in the early 80s D&D was certainly part of the whole satanic panic thing.
Mm.
Like the things that you should never let your kids do is read comics, watch horror movies, listen to heavy metal, or play D&D. I did all four.
And look how
Um,
you turned out.
yeah, my love of goats has nothing to do with Satanism, I swear. Um, and there was one day I was at my friendly local game store, and who are still in existence, like 40 years later, still run by the same guy. He must have had that store when he was 22, and he's like, you know, 60 or 70 now. And I found a little tiny metal skeleton in a Games Workshop blister pack, and I was fascinated by it, like being a horror kid and all the rest of it. Finding this little tiny thing, and I took it home, and I had Humbrol enamels and stuff like that, and
Oh, good
so
old Humbrolls. Yep.
good old Humbrol enamels, those little tiny pots of paint, and I put a bit of paint on it, and I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. I wonder if there's more of these sorts of things. And I didn't really have a an understanding that it was a part of a game rather than using them for D&D. And so I buy knights and stuff like that. And then I came across the glory that is the original Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, and it
Right.
blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. And then those mouse-faced space marines started coming out, and the orcs and stuff like. And then I was just in. Like I was just totally in from then on. Just fell in love with it.
So,
Um,
what year would that have been roughly? Do you think?
84. I was probably 14.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So very not too far after that they had actually started as a business. And
Yeah.
like in Australia, Games Workshop weren't actually in Australia. It was like they were imported, I think, by a company from Melbourne called Military Simulations, who I think are just called Mil Sims now. But I think they were the guys who imported them all into Australia.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
And
and
that's
then
how we got our
I
hands on them
don't
here.
take that as gospel. That's
Yeah.
just what I can faintly remember.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So,
And
good old Rogue Trader. That was like the first love, really.
Oh man, and like it was interesting because it was such I was a 2000 AD kid. Like I love Judge Dredd and Rogue Trooper and Slain and all those characters, and the artwork in this was certainly like very much
Mm.
emulated that. And yeah, it was a dream. And like White Dwarf became my Bible. It was like once a month I'd sort of pray at the altar of the dwarf and everything that they told me to buy, I bought. I went crazy for it. Even down to I used to work in the wool industry. My first job was working in the wool industry, and basically, we had gotten our job. Computers were just sort of entering the workplace, and we had gotten our system to the point where we had streamlined it so that instead of it taking 5 people to run the office, it only took 2. And my boss would come to work, go to his office, and sleep. And I actually would bring my paints to work and paint.
Yeah, right. Nice.
And and then after about 8 years of doing fuck all at work, because as much as the dream is to go to work and get paid to do nothing, it's actually really, really soul destroying.
Yeah.
And so I just thought, I wonder if Games Work, because I'd heard that Games Workshop were they were starting to open stores in Australia and all the rest of it. And I thought, I wonder if these guys are hiring. And yeah, I ended up working for the company.
Amazing. And that, and we were just talking before we started recording, how that was like in the very early days of Games Workshop actually even being here.
I think I was the second intake of people. So I think that they came to Australia in like 95, 96.
Yep.
And they had a fairly well-established team. And because they'd started to really aggressively expand, like I was in trade sales, and trade sales was basically, we were the scout Marines of the business.
Yeah,
so
right.
What we'd do is that we'd find toy shops in like small country towns, like the one I live in now. We'd get the product into there, and if the product did well, then we would aggressively open a store up and shut that shop down. It's like the absolute nastiest business plan.
Oh, wow.
Have you seen Space Marines? What do?
Yeah,
they
that's it. Yeah.
they take everything out.
Yep.
Destroy the xenomorph.
Ground zero, burn it all. Yeah, right. So you, how long did you work for Games Workshop then?
18 months to 2 years.
Okay, all right. So
horrible place to work.
Horrible place to work.
Horrible place to work.
Yeah, didn't like it. Okay.
Yeah, no, it was it was interesting because the gentleman that ran it at the time was not a gamer.
Yeah.
They had hired someone who was
a businessman.
Like you would. You get a businessman to run something like that when you're first moving into a new country. But the problem is that like, so what do you think sells more, a Space Marine or a dwarf from Fantasy Battle? He didn't understand that there was a difference between those things.
Right.
He was certainly of that sell more fish thing. It's just fish. People will buy it. You tell it what they want. But on a week where you've got like and back in those days, it was like a box of 10 Space Marines was $14.99.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Back in the day, back in the good old day.
Yep. So that pocket money price point.
Yep. Shit's changed now.
Yeah. I mean, the way they had worked it was that the boss of the company, a guy by the name of Tom Kirby, and I'm working on memories that are 30 years ago now. Tom Kirby at the time, he had this idea where basically he wanted the way that the product was done was that you could buy a box set with a week's pocket money, so that $10 to $20 mark. You could buy a vehicle with 2 weeks pocket money, so a Land Raider or a Rhino were about $40, and you could buy a box set around and about a month's worth of pocket money. So I think Fantasy Battle as a box set was probably about $120, $140. So you could buy 2 full armies.
Yeah, $120. I remember that. That was
as opposed to what's the new Age of Sigmar?
The new Age of Sigmar box is, I think, $450.
Yeah, the cheapest I've seen it was there's a place called Dice Arcade in New South Wales, and they've got it for $350.
Yeah, right. Jesus, that's pretty good for that box. Yep.
Yeah.
Retail, it's like well over $400.
The old world's $450 for one army.
Oh yeah, that's even fucking worse. Old world's even worse.
The models are 30 years old, 20 years old.
Yep.
Like they're Bretonian models from the Fantasy Battle.
A lot of it is still original sculpting. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I was so happy to see those Eagle Raiders, and when they told me how much they were going to charge me for it, when I remembered buying 3 of those for like $25.
Yeah.
I was like, no, you can.
It's a hard pill to swallow. It's sort of like, they sort of rode like the edge of the wave of what was like. It hurt to buy it, but you'd still found out a way, and I feel like they've come off the edge of that wave now, well and truly. And I know costs and things go up. I get it, but I feel like there's costs going up, and then there's taking the piss a little bit, which is like
when you consider you can get something like I'll just use a Song of Ice and Fire, which is a really nice Game of Thrones game.
Yep.
Like similar to old school Warhammer. It's
Yep.
Rank and file
Yep.
rather than skirmish style. And you buy a box set of that for $150. You get 2 armies in it, and they're built.
Yeah, that's it. They're put together.
You can open that box, watch a 20-minute tutorial on YouTube, and be playing that game by the end of the day.
And away you go. Yep. Yep.
So
they never had that sort of competition back in the day. Yeah.
And like I'm not a Games Workshop hobbyist. Like, even though I've got my painting table here, and it's covered in Games Workshop, but there's a little bit of Kingdom Death Monster and stuff like that on there as well.
Yeah.
I
think you and I are very similar in that vein, in that we're kind of eclectic war gamers to some extent.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we play a little bit of whatever takes our fancy, whatever we like the look of. But, we've got that deep, long-term attachment to Games Workshop, like the old GW that we came in with and started this whole venture with. And so no matter how corporate they get and how much things cost, there's always that little bit of, they always hold that little bit of special something in our hearts, sort of thing. Like, you've got an affection for them in spite of it, just because you remember sort of where it came from, where it was,
100%.
You used to play it back as a kid.
I loved it so much. My army, my main army was Chaos Dwarves.
Nice.
People remember those.
Nice.
They had the big high hats. I had, and really only a war gamer will understand these figures, but I had a 13,000 point
fucking
Chaos
hell
Dwarf
of Chaos Dwarves.
Chaos Dwarf. Not a 1,300, 13,000 points.
Bonkers. That's a lot of fucking Chaos Dwarves. Did you ever get them all on the table?
Oh, fuck no. That I had the flexibility of being able to do it. The thing I liked about Chaos Dwarves was 2 things. They had this amazing cannon called the Earthshaker cannon.
Mm-hmm.
And the way the Earthshaker cannon is that it fired like a mortar, so it fired over. But when it hit, it would drill into the ground and then explode. So anything in a range of where it landed couldn't move.
Yep.
So when you've got a dwarf army that moves 3 inches per turn up against elves who are moving like 12 inches in a charge, 24 if they're on horseback, and they can't move for a turn, they're fucked.
Yeah.
My problem was that I have such bad luck that every single Earthshaker cannon I ever had blew up. Because back in those days, they had that. Wargaming was a lot more like proper wargaming. It wasn't soft like it is now. Like, your cannons blew up on you.
It had a much more sort of shared, a lot more of its DNA with like the old historicals and stuff like that.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Yeah.
And the other thing I liked about it was that you could get hobgoblins. You couldn't take hobgoblins in an orc and goblin army, but you could take hobgoblins in a Chaos Dwarf army. The beautiful thing about hobgoblins was that if you took orcs and goblins as a support, one of the problems with orcs and goblins is that every turn you had to do a leadership test to make sure that they wouldn't infight.
The animosity tests. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Orcs and goblins and snotlings were all so afraid of hobgoblins that there was no infighting.
Oh, nice.
So I would take like I think it was 20% you could take of a support army. I'd take my 20% of orcs and goblins, which is a fucking lot of orcs and goblins, and then a single unit of hobgoblin wolf riders, and keep them at the back of the table. And you had like units of 20 or 30 orcs and goblins who would just roll across the table and not break because they were afraid.
That's it. Yep. Just keep them in line.
It was an absolute rort. And
look at this metagamer. Look at this fucking metagamer here. Jesus.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. And the thing about Chaos Dwarves was too is that they never had an army book. They had There was a Chaos Dwarf book.
Yep.
But it was a collection of I think.
It was like a supplement sort of thing, wasn't it? Like
it was
like White Dwarf articles and all that sort of thing
compiled together.
Yeah.
And that was the army.
Yep.
So it was like
so just bolted on like.
So broken. But there was really cool stuff, like the even down to you had centaurs, but they were boars, so they were half pig, half dwarf.
Oh yeah, right.
And the models were amazing.
Yeah.
And most of these were metal too.
That's right, they would have been. Yep.
Metal.
Yeah.
So they were awesome. But yeah, I love that army. But it was funny, the corporate hullabaloo of a company like Games Workshop hurt me so bad that when I quit, I actually sold everything.
Oh, yeah, right. You became completely disenfranchised with the whole thing.
Space Hulk.
Yep.
Blood Bowl. even down to the old box games that they used to do that were like traditional board games. So I had the first solo game that I ever played was a game called Chainsaw Warrior.
Right.
And Chainsaw Warrior was you're a guy with a gun and a chainsaw and you're fighting zombies.
Right.
And the zombies you turned a card over and that told you how many zombies there were, and you had to slowly make your way through the city with a chainsaw and a gun and try and beat this game that was almost impossible to beat. The art was by Brett Ewins, I think his name is, who was a 2000 AD artist who did things like Bad Company and Dread and stuff like that. Got rid of it. And that game goes for like $400 and $500 now.
Yeah, I was going to say that would be a pricey item these days.
Yeah, I had a Doctor Who game.
Yep.
Which is near impossible to get now, but a friend of mine found one at the Salvos for me and like got it for me.
Oh, what a find!
So yeah, and it's one of those things that like you're flying around the galaxy fighting bad guys, but the game mechanic is that you're accumulating assistance. So the Doctor has no strength by himself, but you're accumulating assistance and weapons as you go, and so that's where you get your. It's how charismatic the Doctor is to be able to collect these things to be able to fight. It was an interesting mechanic. The game's boring as fuck. Like, it's terrible. It's got a beautiful, I think it's a Chris R. Kelios cover of Tom Baker.
Oh, yeah.
It's stunning artwork. The artwork on the inside of the game is dog shit, but the actual cover art is exquisite. And I managed to get that back. But yeah, I sold everything. Yeah, absolutely everything.
Wow.
And then got back into it again maybe 10 years ago.
Okay. All right. That's interesting, actually. That sort of potentially answered a question that I was going to ask, but I'll save it till we get there a little bit later on in the chat. But so would you say about mid-90s, sort of mid-90s-ish, you started working for GW for about 2 years?
I started there in 96 and quit in 97.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So basically, there was a...
and then...
they wanted me to go overseas for further training.
Yeah, okay.
And this sounds great, doesn't it? But the thing was, it was like you go overseas for this month's training or you go.
Right.
My daughter had been born a month earlier.
Yeah.
I'm sure that divorce would have been on the cards if I had have gone home to my wife and said, "Oh, I'm going to go for a month."
Yep.
Like I'd already been overseas and played. So when the Bretonian Lizardmen Fantasy Battle came out, all of the trade salespeople from across the world, everywhere across the world, were invited to Nottinghamshire to play.
Oh, right.
So we all got to go over and play it.
Yep.
Before it came out.
Yep.
And you had to take your army with you.
Right. Okay.
So it was a 1,500 point army, and you would take your army with you. We stayed in a beautiful little place called Retford. And they footed the bill for everything. They basically told us anything we want in the hotel, it's ours.
Yeah, nice.
So there's me and a good friend of mine, Matthew, drinking 100-year-old port and smoking cigars while we're playing
on the GW dollar.
On the GW dollar, and like I haven't smoked for years now, but I was a big smoker back in those days. And these cigars were so big, I swear to God, every time I breathed out, my lungs smelt like bacon. But they were like big fatty. I'm surprised if we didn't send the company broke. Yeah, they were like big stogies. Yeah. We had to go and get a knife from the kitchen to cut the ends off because we didn't have a sticker. And you don't want to use scissors because it pinches the ends. You had to saw them.
And did you take your broken Chaos Dwarves? Is that what you took with you?
Yeah.
Yeah, damn right, yeah.
Yeah, so there we are, all of, God, what was I, 97, 27 maybe?
Yeah.
Drinking port out of a snifter and smoking big fucking stogies and moving little men around and having little fights. Yeah. Serious gaming. And let me tell you something though. If anybody came to me tomorrow and said, do you have an army right now? I've got cigars and port. I feel like having a game of Warhammer. I would be, I'm fucking there.
You're there. We're there. Justin, we're putting it on the cards, man. At some point, that's on the cards. Oh, man. Okay, interesting. So started with Rogue Traeger and then fell wholeheartedly in love with the whole hobby. And then moved into Warhammer Fantasy Battle, working for GW, and then the whole lot went in the bin because you had such a bad experience, apart
Yeah,
from the cigars and port, working
yeah.
for GW.
And don't get me wrong, I have fond memories of the people that I worked with, and I'm still friends with a lot of them.
Yep.
One of them actually creates his own games. He's currently in the middle of creating a Battlestar Galactica
Oh,
game.
nice.
He's sort of he's like a I've never met a gamer as serious as what this guy is. Like he's all about gaming. Like the models that he's done for the Battlestar Galactica game, I think he's even designed himself and is 3D printing himself.
Oh, yeah.
When he and I worked for Games Workshop, we were talking about doing a 1 to 800th scale battleship game, like a World War II battleship game.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Yep.
And then we realized that, like, we started looking at the measurements and how big. So if you've got a 1 to 800 mil battleship, which are like that big,
Yep.
how big's the ocean?
How big's the ocean got to be for that? Yep.
We worked out that we'd need probably half a basketball court to play a game of it. So that's still on the back burner.
Yeah, right. We put that one on pause for a little while. We work out the logistics.
We'll circle round to
that. We'll come back around to it. We'll get back around to
it. But I'm still in love. I'm still in love with the idea of creating games and stuff like that as well. I've been building my own war game for ages. There's an amazing website called Hero Forge where you can create your own figures.
Yep.
And then either get them to print them and send them to you, or you can print them on your own 3D printer. I think in Australia it's like $7.99 for a print.
Yep.
And I've created like a Call of Duty style board game.
Oh, nice. Yep.
And I've made miniatures of all guys and girls with, like, even down to the really awful loadouts of the people that have knives and riot shields. I've even done those jerks. But yeah, it's wargaming's certainly in my blood. Even down to like the video games that I play. Like I'm not that interested in playing like RPGs and stuff like that. I prefer to play against people because I like the psychology of playing against people.
Yeah.
It's why I like board games too. Like I like to watch the way people work.
For you, it's an interactive medium, right? Like, yeah.
I don't get solo gaming at all. I don't get it. My wife was awake last week, and I was like, I'm going to have a week of playing solo board games, and I ended up painting miniatures instead because I played Masters. It's a vampire game. Masters of Night City or something like that. I can't remember what it's called, but it's Masters of the Night, and I set it all up. I played it for about 5 minutes. It's like I could be doing this or playing Call of Duty.
Yeah.
So I ended up playing Call of Duty for 2 hours and then painting miniatures for 2 hours. So.
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, people love some people love it, and there's people who
some people do love it. Yeah, I agree, and I'm with you, Justin. I'm one of those people who gaming is interactive. Like I like playing solo video games. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know, board games and tabletop gaming in particular is for me like that's a social thing. That's something. If I want to do something by myself, well, that's where I will gravitate towards video games. If I want to do something with somebody, well, that's when I tend to like break out the minis and break out the tabletop stuff. That's interesting about you making your own war game, because that sort of segues into my wargaming story, I suppose, in that I was only I was born in the mid 80s, and so the 90s was kind of where I got into wargaming. But by that point, so as you were just saying, that's sort of like in the early days of GW actually coming over to Australia and introducing their products into toy stores, right? That's how I tended to interact with these things and find these things in the very, very early days. I would have only been in primary school at that point, so I had no fucking money to spend on even at $14 a box or $15 a box or whatever they were. That was still well out of my infantile little price range to get into Games Workshop. I got into wargaming through White Dwarf because my local library had a subscription and kept White Dwarf in stock. And so I would just like borrow these magazines out pretty much continually on this constant. I'd go in, I'd take my fucking load of White Dwarves, I'd drop them off, and I'd pick up all the ones that I hadn't read, and I'd take them home, and I'd just be on this cycle. I'd always have White Dwarves borrowed out from the library all the time. And I'd just pour through them, and particularly the battle reports. And that's where I sort of started to learn how this, wargaming thing worked, but I couldn't buy the products that that they were selling. So I made my own, and we had this little secondhand bookstore where I lived, with this dude who in retrospect was like kind of a creepy guy actually. But at the time, you're a child, that lens just isn't there. And he sold these little pewter historical miniatures
Cool.
for like 20 cents each, 30 cents each. If it was a dude on a horse, it might be like, 35 cents, 40 cents. It was a chariot, it might be 60 cents or something, right? And so I would go and buy these with my pocket money and take them home and get to like, mum might have had some cheap $2 store acrylic paints, like those really dodgy ones that don't actually do anything.
Montmartre.
Yeah, exactly right. And I'd paint these up, and I basically kind of got the gist of how a game worked from reading battle reports in White Dwarf, and kind of just filled in the gaps myself, because you didn't have all the rules just from reading a battle report.
Yeah.
But I got the idea of you had to build an army and things costed points, and there was a movement phase, and then there was fighting, and the fighting happened with dice rolls, and there was a to hit roll and a to wound roll, and things had wounds, and once their wounds were gone, they were dead. There was psychology. I started to piece all this stuff together into this game system. And because the miniatures were so cheap in this little secondhand bookstore, all my buddies got in on it as well, because they could just go down and blow their pocket money.
Cool.
And so I came up with this system that they were made of pewter, and again, they're all historical from all different, you had Roman stuff, you had British stuff, you had Aztec stuff. There were just a whole mishmash of different historical figures. And I ended up creating this system that we kind of affectionately ended up calling Lead Men. And we played Lead Men for years on my friend's pool table, which is already lovely, has a lovely green felt surface. Amazing. Right? And we'd have tournaments, Lead Men tournaments, and painting competitions with these shitty little acrylic paints. And we just had a fucking ball. We loved it. Absolutely loved it. He ended up building this big castle and stuff to play siege battles, because we read a siege article in a White Dwarf. How can we do this, and it was just great. And so for years and years and years, it was this wonderful, creative, connected sort of thing that we had going on. And that was my introduction to wargaming up until I got into high school, and had a bit more money behind me, a bit more pocket money in my purse, and I could go in and actually buy actual GW stuff. And the first thing I bought was a box of Catachan Jungle Fighters. That was my very first Warhammer purchase, who the shop owner at the time assured me were very, very cool. I had no idea. When I walked in there, I had no idea what I was going to get or what I wanted. We'd obviously primarily been playing my very budget version of Warhammer Fantasy.
Yeah.
40k was, I often, in White Dwarf, I would just skip past the 40k stuff. I wasn't a sci-fi guy at all. Back then, I loved fantasy. But for some reason, I don't know what happened, I walked out of that shop with this box of Catachan Jungle Fighters, and I built them up and I painted them up. And my friend, I ended up giving him to, who plays Catachans, Imperial Guard Catachans. He still has those original models in his army that I bought all those years ago. They're still around, so that's really, really cool. Every time I see them, I'm plastic, like, right? The boys are still here. Sorry?
They were plastic ones?
Yeah, plastics. Yeah, the very first Catachan plastics. The first.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I don't know what year that was. Yeah, with the giant muscle, it's just the impossible fucking torsos. The first multi-part plastic Catachans. They might have been the first multi-part plastic Imperial Guard, because Cadians didn't exist back then.
No, that's right.
Yeah, which it was an odd choice for Catachans to be the first one, but anyway, that's what I bought. And at some point, I made the move to Space Marines. I think a friend of mine gave me some of those, the monopose Space Marines that were just like this, like chess pieces, basically. He gave me 5 of those, and I played this game with my dad, actually. I remember it's the only time I've ever played Warhammer with my dad. And I totally stacked the deck against him. My dad played a lot of RTS games, right?
Okay, cool.
I love RTS games because of that, because we both shared that. And so I thought, oh, Dad, you might like this. It's kind of like an RTS, but on the tabletop. Anyway, so I totally stacked this fucking deck where I was like, you play my guardsmen. So here's the 20 guardsmen, and I'll play these 5 Space Marines, my new Space Marines. And I built this little cardboard sort of, I don't know, outpost with a tower in the middle. And the objective was that if he could wipe me out in X amount of turns, he would win. Otherwise, if I had anyone left standing, I would win. And so my Space Marines like had all the cover. They had all the fucking, there was no way he was going to beat me. Somehow he did. Like we played through that game and it came out to this like 1v1 battle at the top of the tower, and he ended up beating me. And I always remember that game really fondly. And I think after
those
that,
commissars kick ass.
Yeah,
those commissars are tough.
No, it wasn't even. It was just like I can't remember what we were playing it as. It was just like a general, like a, what do they call it, a captain or something, Imperial Guard captain or something, whatever it was. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it was really fun. Anyway, and then I ended up getting a Space Marine Battle Force back when. Remember Battle Forces?
Yeah,
where you got like a full. It wasn't just like here's the start of an army. It was like here's an army. And a little bit of terrain and some fucking dice, and like you got it all in a box. And I remember getting that for Christmas, I think. I got this Space Marine Battle Force, and that, like the rest was history basically after that, as you say. Like I was in then, and because all my friends had been playing Leadmen and we were all growing up together, they also had expendable income now, or a little bit more expendable income. And so they all jumped on the Warhammer train, and I think we had like a group of like 10 or 11 of us that were all playing 40k, and it was just wonderful because one of the big obstacles to this fucking hobby is other people, right? Having other people to play with that you can stomach being around and want to play with for a couple of hours, or even having access to anyone at all. Back in the day was just, we had some amazing times just because we had, huge scale multi-table battles that were all interacting with each other because we had this wonderful group of friends who all played different armies. Everyone had played something different. Nobody wanted to have the same thing as someone else. So we had this wonderful big array of stuff. And that was my high school years, was like deep into 40k and just loving 40k and being all about it. I remember like one of my favorite memories, I think I started off with Dark Angels, and at some point I repainted them to Black Templars, and I had City Fight. When City Fight came out, I was just obsessed with City Fight because I love,
so good.
like war history, and like Stalingrad was always really fascinating to me and all that sort of thing. And so when City Fight arrived, I painted my Black Templar scouts with like actual City Fight camo cloaks that I think I make it out of tissue paper and PVA glue or something.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
On the table, I'd like lay them face down. And so they'd like blend into the city terrain. They'd actually camouflage, and who I was playing wouldn't see them. And then I'd stand them up and they'd be like, oh, fuck off. It was little fun things like that you get away with as a kid. But that was sort of where I came into wargaming, was through those little historical pewter miniatures, and then moving into 40k after that. And we dabbled in a bit of fantasy, but back then fantasy was a very complicated game. I mean, so was 40k, but fantasy felt much more complicated to play than 40k did, and required a lot more investment in terms of models, because you had to build regiments and all that sort of thing. So I dabbled in a bit of fantasy here and there, liked it, but it was, you only had enough money to play one game as a teenager, and we had already invested in 40k, so that was the one. Hey, let's talk about Mordheim. What do you know about Mordheim? Let's get into the crux of what we're here for.
Well, one of the things I really loved about some of the Games Workshop stuff is I like their side games. I like their games where you can just buy a box and open it and play it.
Yep.
Like Blood Bowl's great, even though it has like an expansive world where you can buy all of the other teams. You can buy a box and just play a game of fantasy football out of that box.
Yep.
Space Hulk was always a favorite of mine, and that came out of a love of Hero Quest.
Yes. Yep.
And because me and my mates loved Space Hulk so much, when Mordheim came out, we were like, this looks like it's going to be pretty cool. Like, it's kind of like Space Hulk, but we're in a fantasy world, and we really like the idea of that. But the thing that really stood out for me with Mordheim was, it was the first time, two things. The first time I'd ever seen the Skaven used so well. Because Skaven were just like, oh, somebody's got a Skaven army. So it was like, oh, you've got a rat army. Good on you, mate. It's not Empire or Britannia or whatever. It felt like it was a throwaway army. It felt like it was just hairy goblins. And it was, hey, baby, let me show you my hairy goblin. Whereas I think that this really gave it an identity, gave Skaven an identity of the way that they worked. And the thing that really stood out for me was there was a headhunter model, a witch hunter model
Yes.
and he had like the pilgrim hat and the
Yes.
flintlock pistol, and he
Fucking
may have
love
been
that
holding a
model.
sword or a knife.
Yep.
That model was like, I bought that game for that model.
Yeah, that model was banging. It's like if you like, like old school Diablo, it's that kind of vibe, I think. That same sort
Yeah.
of that gothic, really gothic, gritty, grimy sort of shit. Speaking of, if you've never played, heard of, seen, know anything about Mordheim, so Mordheim is a very small scale skirmish game produced by Games Workshop. It was released in 1999, I believe, which tracks because it's the 25th anniversary. My math is right. And I think what made it very unique, there was a few things that made it very unique. Firstly, is that there weren't a lot of small scale skirmish miniature games back then. It was like Warhammer Fantasy Battle or 40k. It was like historicals. It was big, grand, dozens of miniatures on a board having big, giant battles kind of thing. Yeah, and then you
No
had
kill team, none of that sort of stuff.
no, 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 and sprinkled amongst that, you had these like very rare little skirmish encounters, like things like Necromunda and Mordheim. Gorkamorka is another one. And so, yeah, good old Gorkamorka.
Good old Gorka Walker.
And so when Mordheim came along, it was sort of coming into a niche, I guess, in the genre that needed filling because there wasn't always, not everyone could play a big giant hundreds of dollars investment battle game. But Mordheim, you got 6-7 dudes and away you go. And like Justin was saying, it came in a box, came in a beautiful, absolutely beautifully illustrated box. One of my favorite pieces of box art that Games Workshop has ever produced, that had 2 warbands in it. You had the humans. I think they were the Reichländer. I can't remember. You could make them Reichländers or Middenheimers, depending on how you built them, or Marienburgers and Skaven. And it had terrain, that old cardboard terrain. Do you remember that? The old school cardboard terrain, the printed cardboard that you put together with the little plastic connectors. It had some rulers, dice, all that sort of thing. Everything you needed to play, which again, back then was a little bit of a rarity outside of games like Space Hulk and Blood Bowl. That there weren't many of them. There weren't many games, especially from Games Workshop, that you could just go and buy the box and you're done. That's it.
Yeah.
You got the rule book in there. You got everything you need. So this is my original Mordheim rulebook. It's unfortunately all I have left of the game. And I have, unfortunately, a bit of a regretful tale to tell with Mordheim because this was like, again, 1999. We are like neck deep in 40k at this particular point. Everyone's on board with 40k. All my friends are playing 40k. We're having these wonderful big narrative games every other weekend. And along comes Mordheim, and I just fall in love with this thing. Like, again, they do a bit of a lead up to it in White Dwarf, in Town Crier, showing off some of the models, the setting, and it just looks so fucking cool, and I just loved it. And so I asked and begged my mum to get me Mordheim for my birthday, which I think in 2000 she did. And I got Mordheim. It was probably the best birthday present I think I've ever gotten in my whole life. This box, when I opened the wrapping, there was this box, and nobody wanted to play it. Nobody wanted to play it because everybody was playing 40k. No one gave a shit about Ratmen or dudes with swords anymore. We just want to play Imperial Guard and Space Marines and shoot each other, and I could not get my group of friends interested in playing Mordheim. I played a couple of games with a buddy of mine who was just as excited to play it because one of the beautiful things about Mordheim is that it's a campaign game. And again, this is going back in the day where there was no such thing, where like you're building a warband and it's got like some light RPG kind of elements to it, where you're taking that warband into the city, Mordheim being a city that has been destroyed by a meteorite, completely annihilated. It's just ruins now. And the meteorite contained this, I think it was warpstone in the meteorite. Yeah. And it's basically like anything that survived has been mutated and fucked up, and it's all just weird and nasty and all kinds of awful. But the warpstone itself is really, really fucking valuable. And so you've got all these warbands going into the city, fighting against each other to try and recover this warpstone. And you build your warband, you name everybody, you give them their independent stats, and you take them in, and they might get injured and carry those injuries along permanently, and they find gold, they might die, and you have to fuck them off out of your warband and replace them. You can give them new weapons that you might find or buy, add people to your warband that you can recruit. And it had this real sort of like a narrative element to it that I had never ever seen in a Warhammer game before. And that appealed to me because everything that I loved about 40k was playing narrative games. Like, we didn't play tournament style points based victory conditions or anything like that when we played 40k. I always came up with some sort of story and then we played it out on the tabletop. And that was all the time. I don't know that we ever played like a points-based game in all the years that we were playing 40k. It was always story-based, narrative-based, character-driven. You know, our individual characters in our armies started to get like, you know, known over the course of time that we were playing. You know, because they accomplished deeds that you'd remember in this sort of evolving story of this little universe that we created. And so Mordheim just sort of filled that for me perfectly. It was like, here's a game where all that shit's built into the actual mechanics of the game. And I couldn't get anyone to play it. And so I ended up, unfortunately, given the year that this came out, the year 2000, I was right into like martial arts movies, kung fu movies, all that sort of thing. House of Flying Daggers and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, all that sort of shit. And so I, perhaps rather stupidly and completely going against the vibe and theme of Mordheim, I converted my human warband into like these like martial arts ninja dudes. And like fully painted them up in like different colors. They look like Power Rangers, you know?
Oh, I love it. Keep flying, kick the shit
I thought it was a great
rats.
idea at the time. At the time, I thought, this is a fucking brilliant idea. No, not really. Didn't age terribly well. And it didn't take long for me to fall out of love with that idea and then realize, oh my God, what have I done to my Mordheim figures? And then, you know, I never really picked it back up after that, unfortunately, even though I still have so much love and affection for it. It's interesting you talking about like the Skaven, Justin, because like for me, when I think of Skaven, I don't think of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. I think of Mordheim. Like Mordheim, they are synonymous to me. Those two,
100%.
Yeah. You could not have Mordheim without Skaven. I don't think just wouldn't be the same.
It wouldn't work without Skaven. Skaven are like the DNA of it. They're the literal DNA of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed, totally.
It's the other thing I
say that about. If I can just say something, it's so funny you should say that about Mordheim and like the RPG element of it being so important because it's so funny that like Games Workshop itself, what was it? Jackson and Livingston, were that the guys that started?
Yeah, yep.
Steve Jackson and
way back. Yep.
I mean, they started it because like they liked the idea of Dungeons and Dragons, but wouldn't it be fun if we could just fight?
Yeah, that's it.
And you know, like so they sort of took inspiration from things like H.G. Wells in either the late 1800s or the early 1900s actually wrote a book called Little Wars.
That's
which
right,
is
Little Wars.
The rules for a war game. And so they were a little bit inspired like that. It's funny, that's such an artifact of its time as well, because like the introduction to it says a game, Little Wars is a game for boys and men and girls of a particular type. I remember reading that line to my door, and she just sort of sat there with her arms folded and went, "That guy can go fuck himself." And now, like some of the people that I follow that play Warhammer, like on YouTube and stuff like that, are women who are far more into it than I think I've ever been.
Yeah.
And back in those days, H.G. Wells is like, only if you're a particular type of girl.
Oh, Wellesley trying to be inclusive, you know, like giving it his best.
He started early. He was the spearhead of the movement.
Oh, Wells. Oh dear. The other thing that I find synonymous with Mordheim, besides like the amazing setting, the narrative element to it, Skaven, is just the art. Like Mordheim would not be, you know, you get those things where Planescape is one that comes to mind for D&D, right? Like Planescape would not be the same without Didalitzi's artwork. Like they are just synonymous with one another. When you think of Planescape, you think of that particular artwork. And if you see artwork, like he's done artwork for like the Spiderwick Chronicles and stuff like that as well. But every time I see it, my brain just goes Planescape, right?
Yeah.
It's the same with
Dark Sun for me. Do you remember Dark Sun for
Yes.
D&D?
Yep.
Brom bronze art for Dark Sun. Like,
you just the two just go together. You know, like they are emblematic of each other.
yeah,
John Blanche's artwork for Mordheim is like, you know, like this sort of shit. Is just like, and it's just pages and pages and pages of this like super gothic, beautiful ink. And I love black and white inks for doing art. Whenever I do a little bit of art myself, it's always, I mean, it's nothing to this sort of level, but I always love working in black and white inks. And a lot of that comes from this back in the day, like looking through the Mordheim book and just being stunned by just the visuals of it. It's just got this feeling, this macabre feeling all of its own that you just don't get, I don't think, anywhere else. I mean, like, what the fuck even is going on here? Like,
do you know what I think it is? And it's across all of Blanche's art.
Yeah.
There is a consistent feeling of dread.
Oh, 100%. No matter what he does, yes, you're right. It's that scratchy, messy kind of style of his that, you know, I've probably, you know, taken inspiration from over the years that I just adore. There's something about it because no one else's art looks like his. You know what I mean? Like, you can, as soon as you see a piece of his art, you're like, it's like John Blanche. Straight away, you know. And it feels like Mordheim, and Mordheim would not be the same without it, I don't think.
And it's so much, his art feels like sort of like the awful sort of, I don't mean awful being bad, I mean awful being like more dread inspiring, like I said, but it feels like more classical art. It feels like Pluto eating his sons and things like that. It feels like classic art.
It does. Yep.
But then it's a rat man being stabbed by a dwarf.
Yeah, it's a fucking rat man.
I don't know why this is giving me this feeling. And then you look at it and you go, oh, it's a knight cutting the head off an orc.
It's weird. Like, look at this dude here, like with the fucking bit in his mouth hanging under the cannon. Like, it's just weird, macabre shit. And, you know, for teenage Jamie's brain, just looked at that and went, fuck me, look at this. You know, scenes like, I could look at this all day, honestly.
Everything looks like syphilis and dysentery.
Yeah, it just looks like pestilence and disease, and everything is terrible. And so
it's all four horsemen all at once in every picture.
And that's Mordheim to me. Like, it just as much as Planescape and Diddlitzy, it's like Blanche and Mordheim are just like, they are the same thing. You know, like one could not possibly exist without the other for me.
Yeah.
So that's sort of my sad little story about Mordheim. It sounds like you bought the box, gave it a little bit of a go, but by the sounds of it, this would have come out in your period of time where you were like, fuck Games Workshop, basically. Like, I don't want anything to do with it.
I still grabbed that because of the art and because of that particular miniature. I had just sold all of my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that was one that I couldn't resist. We had heard murmurs about it when we were working, but when it came out, it was like, yeah, I've got to own this. And it's like such an influential game. Like I bought Cyberpunk Red the other day, and they've got a new skirmish game, and it basically comes with cardboard buildings that have plastic connectors.
Yeah.
And you play as two gangs taking control of a city.
Yep. How many miniature skirmish games exist now that have a narrative element to them? You know, like
surely all of them.
Yeah. Like it spawned. So I don't want to say, like, there's so many things that have been influenced by Mordheim, you know, like that we may not have if Mordheim didn't come along. But for Mordheim to be doing it when it did it, to be like that front runner, that's doing something that we hadn't really seen before. And somebody in the comments is probably going to jump down and say, well, blah, 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 blah existed and it did everything that Mordheim... I'm sure there were probably other miniatures games, other skirmish games that had narrative elements to them. But I don't know, Mordheim sort of like became embedded in that hobby as the benchmark for doing that sort of thing. I feel
it's a legendary Games Workshop game, like Warhammer Quest. Like it sits there with this. It's like a glowing box. It's like a god box.
It's something that even 25 years later, people are still actively playing Mordheim. Like you can't say that about basically any other Games Workshop product, really, or any other miniatures game from that era back then, really.
It's the monopoly of Games Workshop.
Yeah, it really is. And it's gorgeous and it's beautiful and I love it to bits. And I only wish that I had have been able to interact with it more meaningfully during its heyday.
Yeah.
But sadly, I now no longer have any of that. The box is long gone. I'd give anything to have that fucking box back, if nothing else. But I kept the book, damn it. I've still got the rule book. All right.
Swings and roundabouts.
Hindsight, prevailed somewhere amongst all of that. When you move through these hobbies and you're like, I'm selling on my Warhammer and I'm getting into this or whatever, getting a motorbike or whatever. Yeah. Somewhere in the back of my subconscious, something told me to keep the rule book, which means it is possible for me at some point in my life to actually pick this up and play it again, which would be fantastic. One day when Justin and I are living in closer proximity and we have nothing, no commitments or responsibilities, and we can just do things like this all day. But speaking of, we are going to engage with Mordheim in our own individual ways, just to have a little bit of a celebration of this, super iconic war game and Games Workshop product, something that's very meaningful to me, meaningful to a lot of people, Justin as well. We wanted to. I felt like I wanted to do something on the 25th anniversary of Mordheim, and so we've got a little bit of a challenge that we're going to be running through over the next weeks, months, towards the end of the year, however long it takes. We're not sort of putting any hard time frame on this thing, where we are going to be basically like assembling warbands. Each of us are going to build a warband for Mordheim just as a bit of a hobby and art project, just something to have on the shelf as a little wink and a memento that we can look at and go, good old Mordheim,
Yeah.
And I'm really, really excited about it. I haven't done any hobby for, years, I want to say at this point. It's been
I'm paying this idiot at the moment. So
I see you're back into it. You've fallen back in as we do, like these things come and go. And I have a bad habit of like, whenever I move on to a new hobby, I tend to like just all the old hobby has to go to fund the new hobby, But this is going to be something that's much more manageable, like it's just, and that's one of the beautiful things about Mordheim is you only need 6, 7, 8 dudes. And that's it. That's the investment. You're done. As long as you know someone who's got the rules and you've got some terrain lying around, you can use anything. That's your Mordheim sorted. So it's not like we're trying to paint and build armies here or anything like that. We're just going to put our own little spin on some Mordheim warbands. And
I'm very excited.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I'm really, really looking forward to it, to seeing not only what we each come up with, but just having that little piece of Mordheim on the shelf and just to dabble in it for a little while,
Maybe we need to make a little Mordheim 25th anniversary plaque to sit our models on.
I think, making some sort of display for them, maybe, I think would be a really cool idea. That's something I could definitely get behind, having like building the warband and then having like because again, we're not playing with them actively. Having like a little display for them to sit in, like some sort of little diorama sort of thing could be really awesome as well. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Love it.
Cool. So make sure you, if you are into Mordheim, you're into wargaming, if that sounds like something that might be interesting, Justin and I are going to be documenting our journey as we put together this little warband and delve into this little celebration of all things Mordheim over the next few weeks and months. And you'll see videos about our progress as we go through this on the channel as we put them together. Basically, again, no real set time frame, but keep an eye out for them. They're going to pop up here and there as we've got something to show.
So without sharing what you're doing, Jamie, do you have ideas sitting in your head?
I have a very strong stylistic idea for what I want to do. And it's not something I've ever done before or even tried to do in any of my, 30 odd years of wargaming now. So yeah, I've got something brand new, very bold and stylized, but I think it's going to be fairly achievable as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to trying that out. Something very Mordheim, we'll say that.
Okay, cool. Yep. I've got 2 that I'm sort of, I'm sort of balancing, and I can't decide what to do. And I've actually, when we started discussing this, I actually started looking at Mordheim lore and Warhammer lore, and the two ideas that I have. I've started to go down the path of seeing what their warbands would look like.
Oh, nice. Yep.
And of course I've started going to like Dice Arcade and the comic, the Combat Company and Mill Sims and stuff like that.
Yep.
Started to look at what would work in that army.
Oh, nice.
So,
yep.
Yeah.
What could you get away? And that's kind of the beauty of Mordheim, isn't it? Like, because as long as you can pass something off as looking like, like let's say if you're doing Reichlanders, you don't have to source GW Empire miniatures. As long as you can find something that is Reichlander like, you could throw it on the table and use it. You could use those little pewter miniatures that I paid 20 cents each for back in the day.
That's right, yeah.
And play Mordheim with them, like it's a lovely little thing like that. Was you can proxy, that's the word I'm trying to find. You could proxy them in very easily for Mordheim, because you don't need ranks and ranks and ranks of them.
Yeah, that's right.
Nice. Well, I think we might wrap it up there, Justin. As much as I could sit here and just yap on about wargaming, and I'm sure we'll do this again at some point in the future, being, avid wargamers and wargame enthusiasts and tabletop enthusiasts, as well as everything retro and video and movie and all that sort of stuff that we usually do.
A bunch of nerds.
Yeah, just a fucking bunch of nerds, really, all together, all up. Hey, if you enjoyed hanging out, firstly, thanks so much if you're still here and enjoyed the video and stuck around. If you liked this, if you like the direction of this, if you like these sorts of chats, make sure you go down and leave us a comment and let us know. Because, yeah, we enjoy doing it. And so if you enjoy watching it, then we'll know that we can do more of this sort of thing. Because, yeah, any excuse to sit and talk about stuff that we're passionate about and that we love.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. All right, Justin, thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
We'll call it there. And yeah, make sure you keep an eye on the channel for more Mordheim goodness coming in the future, as well as all your usual retro gaming frivolities as they pop up. But until next time, my name has been Jamie Dean.
I'm Justin.
And make sure you keep on side scrolling. Take it easy.